Welcome everyone to SaaScast, the podcast that talks you through the steps you need to future-proof your product, whether that's building the ultimate marketing team or taking your products global. Our guests will help you grow, scale up, and work smarter.
Thanks, Sarah, for coming on SaaScast again. Second time visit. It was a great conversation last time. I think last time was more focused on kind of, high level kind of sales strategies, right? Maybe just again, people who haven't heard, maybe just reintroduce yourself to our audience.
You don't think everyone already knows me? No, of course not. I will reintroduce myself. So my name is Sara. I have been in revenue my entire life, so 22 years now. I'm getting gray haired. You don't see it in the light, but it's there. It's so amazing. And I have spent plenty of years in SaaS, specifically since 2012 when I had my first IC role in SaaS in the revenue side. And then I have done all the roles, basically from SDR to AE to VP sales to zero, climbing into this amazing corporate structure that scale-ups are. So I've done everything from small startups and basically pre-seed. We have nothing, we have a product, we have an idea, and growing that. And also have been working with bigger SaaS companies who are more in the scale-up mode. Like Vino as an example, behind the scenes on officiating operations for revenue and marketing, right? So I've really done all of the things in SaaS. And I started a company with my co-partner and husband, who's also been very similar time in SaaS, so 12 years, I think, for him as well. And we're now doing a very niche consultancy house for SaaS companies, surprisingly, where we work with amazing SaaS founders to grow revenue in companies that are everything from pre-seed to startup to scale up. It's super fun. So that's me.
So I think in the past, there was sort of an attitude that in certain fields, people, of certain predispositions or certain conditions, certain mindsets, maybe couldn't enter certain industries, certain fields of expertise, such as sales. Or as an attitude of kind of like you have to fit into that box, otherwise you'll have to go elsewhere. But I think we're seeing that changing, and I don't know if you could elaborate a bit more on that, Sarah.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are several things related to the profession sales, and this is not only for SaaS, this is sort of for all sales roles in all types of companies, where there are certain behaviors and characteristics that we are sort of looking for to fill in that sales box of how salespeople should be. And one of the things that's very interesting with this is that the Gartner just released research on this, which proves my point. I've been saying this for years, that salespeople are very likely to be neurodivergent or have neurospicy brains, is what I call it. And they just released statistics on this, that this is something that they have now proven, that about 43% of people working in revenue actually are neurodivergent. And one of the things that's interesting with that part is that, so this role that we have painted up, I don't know, the Wolf of Wall Street salesperson, right? There are certain characteristics here when it comes to having no limits, being open in your communication, all of these things that relates to certain diagnoses. And one of the things that I think we need to move away from, and I already see that happening on the market, is the idea that a salesperson needs to be a certain way, and instead sort of embrace who we are as people and use that in our role. I have 2 diagnoses. I'm bipolar and borderline. And both of these diagnoses play a huge part in how I operate. They play a huge part in how I get focused on things. It plays a huge part in how I communicate. Because when you meet me, you will notice that, okay, she's not like everyone else. I can't put a finger on what it is, but there is something. And when you look at the sales profession, a lot of people are like me. And obviously that is not trainable, the brain, how it works, right? But what is trainable is the traits that we're looking to achieve in sales. And curiosity is a thing that I have been talking about since I went into SaaS. That curiosity as a skill, it's a trainable skill, is super important to have. Neurodivergent people have it sort of more naturally. They are naturally more curious overall, besides on the autism spectrum, which is another side of this. So when it comes to ADHD, bipolar, borderline, these type of diagnoses is very common in the sales profession. But our leaders don't know that because they didn't do what I started doing when I started recruiting. So I have had several sales teams. I've recruited SDRs, I've recruited AEs, I've been a VP sales and had a team several times. And one of the things that I used to do in the first interview was to ask, so what type of trauma do you have? Because a lot of these diagnoses are trauma induced. What type of trauma have you had in your life that you want to share about? You don't need to go into details. I just want to know, have you experienced something in your life that has been very, very hard on you? And I never moved on in a conversation with the people who were like, no, I grew up happy, I have a happy family life, like nothing happened to me when I was a kid, my career has just functioned, like I have no struggles. Because to be fair, if you look at what is required from a salesperson, managing rejection comes from habit. So managing rejection comes from habit, but if you've never been rejected in your life, then this job will be very heavy on you, right? So there are certain things here that are really interesting to look at from a sales leader perspective when we recruit, when we onboard, and when we lead our teams. Because another example I had, I know that this is because there are certain roles in sales and revenue teams that are not hardcore sales, right? We have customer success, we have companies working with bigger enterprise projects, which means you need project leads, you need individuals who are good at driving projects while they upsell and sell more, right? So NRR is the target here for that group. And on that side, you can have people who are super, super blue, super analytics, super good at driving projects, who can stand for more revenue than the sales teams do. Because when they are in a project, they're amazing at driving, which is also a skill set that I see a lot of salespeople needing to adapt to moving forward. Because that has to do with how the market moves. Because one of the things that we see a lot of today as well is that, so we have SMB and mid segment. That's one segment that we have so many sales reps in SaaS on, so many SDRs, so many salespeople are working that segment. And then we have the enterprise segment, the gurus of social thought leadership and stuff around their products who are amazing at what they do, but they're not as many. That market will continue surviving because their skill sets that they have learned, that's why they're in the position they're in, is very different from I will drive 40 deals a month type of salesperson. It's a very different beast. And the criteria and the skill sets that are requires a lot more curiosity and creativity up here than it does down here. So all jobs where we will give someone a script and say, do this, say this in each meeting, do the same thing over and over again, those roles won't be here for that long. So we need to sort of get creative. And this is also a trainable skill. So most of this is trainable. We just need to start wanting to train it.
Yeah, 100%. One of the things I love that you're doing is, not just talking about how we can train people who are neurodivergent to sort of get things over the line, but also how their particular way of seeing the world can really be an asset. And I love that aspect of rejection.
Yeah.
In particular, I mean, I can relate to that myself. I'm dyspraxic.
Right?
Yeah, and it honestly, it's like it's been the thing that like has like marked my whole life since school.
Yes.
Is just being humiliated really because I can't do certain things, and then what happens when you get that? Like you carry that through life, the fear of rejection. But then hopefully, after a while, by pushing through it and doing those things that are scary to you that are not necessarily as scary to people who are neurotypical, you can develop a kind of resilience and also, I think, a kind of empathy as well. Perhaps people who can just do these things more easily maybe don't have, which I think is probably a key skill as well, isn't it? Having empathy, I think. People kind of think of salespeople as being almost a bit kind of cutthroat, which I guess is old-fashioned. But I think what you're talking about, creativity, that goes hand in hand with empathy.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, being able to put yourself in the shoes of prospects and make it seem like you're really listening to them and you're really hearing them. And I think that comes from rejection as well. 100%.
Yes. It does. And I think that's so interesting when you're talking about sort of the image of sales. Like what is a salesperson? And again, Jordan Belfort in Wolf of Wall Street, is like the typical, and this is a movie that I don't know, 10 years old, but the same portray was done in the 80s with Always Be Closing. Like, it's the same idea that I am a person who only cares about my commission check. And the problem with that is that there is a lot of salespeople out there who are told by their managers that that's how they need to be. That's how they need to be. They incentivize them on being that way. So all they do is make money on certain behaviors, and none of these behaviors, in my opinion, makes them a good person, unfortunately. And for me, this has been a super important part of my work ethic. I have tons of empathy. And in several situations, I have been trying to work with my team to make them increase their empathy level, so that they are better at solving the customer's actual problem and fear, instead of just doing, no, that's not going to be a problem, we will solve it like this. And instead just empathize. I understand why this worries you. Like, I can relate to why it worries you. And these conversations are so different in nature. The typical sales script, this is what you should say in the meetings, versus how you interact as a human being with other people, with empathy and leading with, I am here to help you. I am not here to do this for me. I am here to do this for you. And it's the same thing when I did a lot of social selling a couple of years ago, when social selling was a new thing, so 2017, for SaaS salespeople. And I was literally sitting in rooms trying to educate people, and this still happens, on how to have normal conversations like a normal human being with other people in text. Like, so okay, I can give you an example. I'm working with a customer right now, and they have an amazing platform, and they sent over, like, this is our outreach, right? And the first line in that essay, in the email that they were supposed to send out, was, I hope this email finds you well. And Anthony, so what I wrote back is, would you ever say this out loud to a person? Like, I hope this visit finds you well. We need to stop being two different people in text and in person. And at the same time, when all you're being told as a sales rep is follow the script, and this is the script, dude, like, come on. And then I gave them a bunch of examples, because what normally happens, and it's interesting, I book my own meetings still, because I think it's so much fun. I love booking meetings with new potential customers, SaaS companies that are like in the startup, scale up situation. And the first thing that I send over often is like, hey, and then the name, what's popping? That's my entry line, like when we connect. And they're like, oh my God, so much things are happening. And then they just start talking, because this is how I would speak. Like, I would definitely say to you, Anthony, what's popping? How are you doing today? Like, what is happening for you? Because it has to do with personality coming through, right? And it's the same in sales meetings physically.
Yeah, I think it's I mean, this is diverging a little bit, but I'll touch on it just because it's something that a lot of people are concerned with AI. You know, the thing that everyone's talking about. Okay, it's people are worried about AI, and they think that, AI can do all customer service stuff. Of course it can, and it's kind of like, yeah, but the thing is, people don't open up.
No.
Unless they feel like a human being is talking to them, who actually is listening to their concerns. This is what I say. So even though AI, even if it can solve your problems, it doesn't make a difference, because people don't open up to machines, or software or whatever it is. They're not going to, because it's weird, I mean, unless you're like me and you thank ChatGPT when it does something for you, which is a whole issue that I've got that I need to get over.
That's a you thing, Anthony. It's a you thing. Like, that has nothing to do with. Okay, but I need to touch on this. And by the way, we can't have any pod recordings today not talking about AI. Like, it comes up in every conversation, right? So let me touch on my point of view on this a bit. Because I agree that right now, AI won't form deep, meaningful connections with people. Like right now, where we are technology-wise now, it won't. What I think is the problem right now in the market is that how we train SDRs, let's say that AI is the SDR, like we're trying to replace SDRs with an AI, right? How we train SDRs is that they're just as bad as connecting with people as AI is right now. So how we train our sales teams are as poorly performing as AI do. So the reason why a lot of CROs and VP sales right now are like, so what if I can outsource SDR work? It's because they know that the output their human SDR work team is doing is literally the same quality of outreach. And that's one of the challenges, right? So if you look at how AI will evolve, right now, it could literally replace SMB SDRs. Right now, based on that, those SDR teams out there, specifically in SaaS, basically they're following a script from someone, which is exactly what the AI would do. Like there's an instruction manual, and they follow it, and the creativity is killed by how they are measured. And the AI would do just as good or poor job as the SDR team, because they are instructed by the VP sales or by the sales manager, right? So at the moment right now, I am looking at the BDR AI right now for our business, because I want to try it. And I found an amazing company. I will drop 11 XA just in the pod right now. That I had the chance to talk to their AI, and he's really good compared to the cold calls that I get from people. Do you understand? This is the problem. So if we're going to keep having people doing something that only requires a script and an instruction, then we need to stop giving them script and instructions, and we need to change what we're teaching them. Otherwise, AI will replace BDRs and SDRs. They just will within a couple of years. As soon as the legal situation in Europe sort of shifts, which it will, because this will be pushed by the tech companies, so that it's legal to do AI outreach, then it will. And then the question becomes, so who will be left? Let's say that we have the doomsday scenario. Sales isn't necessary anymore. So SMB will be completely outsourced to online experience. So there will be a self-onboarding. You will talk to an AI in a bot form or in a voice call or whatever it is, or even in a video call to get to the process where you purchase whatever your product is. And the onboarding in the product is also self-service. You don't talk to anyone, right? And this is already happening. Who is left? So the people who are left are the people who have enterprise sales skill sets. So the people who have a mentalization ability, so being able to mentalize with the customer and paint the picture of a project success in a good way. Mentalizing, that's one of the skill sets that you need, and that you can break down into many small skill sets. Number 2, agility of mind. So being quick on your feet and being able to condensely inhale in knowledge and then use it at the right time in the sales process to drive the deal forward. And the third skill, and this is Gartner data, by the way, again, I will send you the pod link to that pod because you need to listen to it, that talks about this, is AI collab. So the people who are curious enough to learn AI software right now to be good at prompting the data they want, these people will be the one who remains in sales, because they will be very much harder to replace than the person who says, call this number, say this thing.
Yeah. That's a really good point I think a lot of people are making right now. It's just the kind of thing that, like, if you want to not be replaced by AI, you need to show how you are better than AI.
You need to move, yes.
Yeah. You can't just do the same thing. So, like, from my side, as somebody who's in content marketing, I can't just put out loads of content that's AI generated, because then that kind of that consolidates the idea that I'm replaceable, in a way. It's kind of I have to sort of show how I can get people to engage with posts in a way that AI can't.
That's exactly the point. So AI collaboration is what will make these people stand out. I can give you several examples. So I publish 10 to 20 posts a week on LinkedIn. My own, I publish 10 to 20 shares on LinkedIn every week. I do 180 comments. Do you think I do that fully manually? Hell no. There's no way. I also run 2 businesses and I have a team of 12 marketeers and 3 SDRs. Hell no that I'm doing that on my own without collaboration with marketing technology, AI technology. So one of the things that I think is super important here is that since I am tech interested, I love sales tech, I think it's so much fun, and marketing tech. Since I am tech curious and tech interested, I will scour the market to find support for myself in the role that I'm in right now. I will do the same for my team, so I will give them tools. This is what you can use, this is how you should use them, and this is what VP sales and CROs needs to start doing. They need to take accountability and at least be one of the curious people, because then they can enforce that in their team's mentality as well. So if you find an interesting platform, bring it to me and I will research it and figure out if we can use it or not. And most VP sales and CROs right now, they're like, no, we have so many systems, we can't. And they've been saying this for years. Dude, it's time to move. We can't keep looking at the tech stack as a hindrance. We need to start looking at how we can tie together multiple platforms to fully bring us whatever the individual in your team needs. And another great example of this, so when I do meetings with new potential customers, when I do prospect meetings to talk about how we can help them scale their revenue, before that meeting, I have a bot literally sending me a summary based on information I want to know about the customer straight into my email before the meeting. So 15 minutes before, I get my research sent to me, and then I can be like, oh, highlights. So I don't need to go into their website. I don't need to research them on my own. What I did was that I gave the AI a framework to give me the data I need based on how much funding they have, how many people are there now, how many of them are working in sales, all the data that's relevant for me in my conversation. And it boggles my mind that VPs and CROs in SaaS companies right now are not only doing this basically, because they should be.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I like that. You know, I think there's the thing is, like, I think we're getting better. I mean, I certainly am anyway at implementing AI as a tool.
Yes.
As a tool to be used that augments human capabilities.
Yeah, that augments you as a person in your role, right? Because that's the whole point. Augmentation, not replacement.
100%. Yeah. So let's get back to
you know how these talks are, Anthony. You know how it works.
I know how they are. It's fine. It's great. I love it. I absolutely love it. So we obviously we don't want to turn our people into machines.
No.
And I think that ties in with what we're talking about neurodivergent people and why it's important to be inclusive to people who think about different ways and think about things in different ways and to have a diverse pool of talent you bring in. So my question then is, I think I want to talk about what it is about SaaS in particular that's kind of necessitated the inclusivity of neurodivergent people, because maybe I'm going completely down the wrong track here. But, we talked about how people had an old-fashioned mindset. Is there anything in particular about, SaaS or software tech in general that means that, we have to become more inclusive? What is it about that field in particular that lends itself to neurodiversity? Do you see what I'm getting at?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. And I think that I can give you one word: speed.
Yeah.
Speed.
Okay.
Yes, speed.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that I have noticed, and I've been in other businesses than SaaS too, I've worked as a consultant for other businesses in SaaS too. I get bored out of my mind if things don't move fast. I need chaos for me to feel great, which means that I can organize things, right? And I believe that if we look at putting people who are not like everyone else in the company into certain roles, they will speed up process. They will fall a bunch of times. And they will learn a bunch of things with their team, but they will learn and fail fast, and then they will learn more and move. And one of the things that SaaS needs is speed. So that's one of the reasons why I think that when people come into our teams who are neurodivergent, you can accelerate their speed or you can hinder it as a leader. When you recruit, when you see these type of behaviors, you should have a conversation. You should ask, do you have something that I need to know as a manager to be able to manage you better? And that should happen very early on. And if you find people who have these type of conditions, you should talk to them about it. And that should be part of your ongoing quarterly session with this person. Because for me, when I've run teams before, and I do the same now, I have a quarterly session with each team member in the revenue team, looking at, so what have you done last quarter that was boring out of your mind, that was boring to you? What have you done that was exciting? And what do you want to do more of next quarter? And a lot of these conversations end up being about what triggers their dopamine and what triggers their ability to run fast. And if you're not aware of that, it's sort of you will fall flat with that employee because they need certain things to function. But when they get those things, it's magic. It's magic, Anthony. I swear to God, it's magic. Because then that person will run and you will I'm not going to see you for a year because you're super focused on what you're doing and I'm just providing you the things you need. And I believe that a mix is the best situation for this. And this is the same with also neurodivergence is one thing. The other thing has to do with inclusivity in other things, origin and culture, and like all of these things. When you come together as a team, when you have different perspectives, it boosts creativity, and creativity is something that also drives speed. We need to sort of combine. So the people that I've worked with a lot of people who have ADHD. As an example, I don't have that. I have a daughter who has it. She's 16. I know exactly how to help her because I've worked with people who have ADHD, who's adults. So I understand sort of how to manage the things she needs help from me from. And it's the same with employees. But even though I don't have that diagnosis, I don't have those criteria, I don't have those traits, I can still be empathetic enough to understand that if I give you A, B, C now, you will just go. But if I don't give you ABC, because that's not part of how I lead, then you will stand still and you will do nothing. Because that's typical for ADHD. Like, you need incentive that fits your brain function. And when we look at inclusivity as a whole, we can see as an example very clearly that mixed gender teams perform better revenue. They just create more money. And one of the reasons why that is because perspectives drive creativity, and creativity drives sales process. We don't understand the correlation fully as leaders right now, but if you start looking at what is it that makes this team perform so immensely much better revenue-wise versus this other team, I bet you 100 that this is creativity. So they have more creativity. They approach customers with a lot more creativity. They have more empathy, and they're walking with the customer rather than dragging the customer with them. And it's a huge difference in results and win rate.
Yeah, I can believe it. Yeah. Why is then? I mean, this might be a really, really obvious question, but even if it's obvious, I wonder if you could speak about your own experience of this a little bit and what you've seen. Why is it that you think that people are frightened to disclose certain neurodivergent conditions that they have, or whatever it is? What is it about that blocks them, do you think?
I think that the answer to this is there is a simple one, and then we have a more complicated one. But the simple one is judgment, like to be judged. Because talking about these things, when I made the decision, when I got my diagnosis, and this is, I don't know how long it is, 8 years ago, when I got my diagnosis, I was like, I'm telling everyone. Yeah. So I had to make a decision that it doesn't matter. The people who judge me for this, they shouldn't be around me anyway. But I came as a, 34-year-old woman at the time. I wasn't a 16-year-old or a 20-year-old. So I have already built my stability that I know who I am. And when you are 25 and you're in a workplace and you have conditions like this, and you're aware of it, maybe your close family and friends are aware of it, but you don't know how to bring it to your boss, it is because the environment isn't open enough for you to feel safe there. That's one of the reasons why people don't share, because if you as a manager don't bring it up, the employees won't feel like this is a place to talk about these things. I have as an example, this is a tattoo. This symbol is upp och ner, it's upside down symbol, which is a symbol for bipolar, or that you are open to talking about these things. And this type of show and tell, like you can talk to me, you don't have to tattoo yourself as a manager, obviously, but bringing it up in the team environment, so I understand that we are all different. And if there is anyone who has struggles that has to do with how they function, please come talk to me so I can support. Because you don't need to make it into a big deal. It's the same as a person who, miss an arm or has an extra robot arm. Like, it's just a thing that you can't do anything about. But I believe that judgment is the thing, and judgment comes from people not understanding. And I fully understand that, but I also believe that a lot of the people who judge this very hard are people who probably should go get checked.
Yeah.
Because they are denying the fact that this can exist. I mean, culturally, it's very different. In Sweden, where I am now, this is very spoken about. I think it's 45% of all kids in high school have something, like diagnosed something, which means that half of the population in this country has something. That doesn't differentiate from other countries. There is no we have more here. Like, this is how it looks. It's just that we're diagnosing it here. And in Greece, as an example, where my husband and co-founder comes from, he also has diagnosis. We fit perfectly together. But where he comes from, they don't believe in mental health. They don't believe it's a thing. So for them, you have issues. Go fix them. There is no therapy. There is no diagnosis. There is none of these things. So in that environment, and this is the same if you look at a corporate environment, people suffer more than they have to. So you as a leader need to look yourself in the mirror and be like, so maybe if I have 10 team members, 3 probably have something. Maybe I should talk to them about that. Maybe I should look at my team members and be like, that person seems to have a problem with finishing a project. They seem to be always getting to 90%, and then it's sort of, ooh. And maybe in that situation, you should have a conversation and show them proactively that you won't judge them. Because I'm too old for this, but it's 2024. Like, isn't it time that we embrace that differentiating factors about yourself is a good thing? It's an amazing thing. And for me personally, I see this as my superpower, but I also know that a lot of people who have diagnosis really don't. Because they don't feel judged, and they don't feel supported, and they don't feel helped, and they might not be getting the help they need. And then you instead go through a career where you fail at every job you have. Because the only difference is that someone could have directed you, this is what you should do, and you would have been great at that job. But instead you didn't get that conversation happening, therefore you just think you're a failure. And it's not true.
Yeah, I do you know, one of the things I go back and forth on a lot is kind of thinking like, you know, there's a fine line between kind of, motivating people and saying like, no, you can do this, you know, you can be more, and making somebody feel ashamed of who they are and the things that they're struggling with. And I think people used to call it tough love. And I do believe in it to a degree. You know, because I think, you know, myself, like, you know, if I've been allowed to kind of fall back on some of the things I was frightened of, you know, or some of the problems that I had, I think I would have probably just never done anything, you know, and we're getting parenting here, but I'm always like fascinated by it. And this applies to all aspects of life, but especially, you know, at work, how you do it, how you kind of motivate people, make them feel like they can be more than they can be, you know, or more than what they've got more to offer, without kind of making them feel like they're making
like what they are isn't good enough, right? That's
that's what I'm getting. I'm getting.
Yes.
So difficult, isn't it? Because I think back to school and I think about like teachers who probably had like really good intentions, but instead it had the opposite effect where I became like paralyzed with fear.
Yes.
You know.
Yes,
and I think for somebody who's a leader, you know, like yourself, that's probably something that you have to be really mindful of, isn't it, at all times?
And I think that one of the things that I think is also important, and I've gotten this question by one manager in my entire career, like one manager. So what he asked me was, so what do you want me to do less of when it comes to coaching you? What do you want me to do less of? What pisses you off? Like, what makes you feel bad? And then I could so when you say this, that doesn't work for me. I understand that it works for some people, not for me. And all of these conversations, when I became more senior, I started initiating them myself. And this is a tip for everyone who has a manager in SaaS: talk to your boss. Like, if you are in an environment, and if you feel like you can't talk to your boss about how you want to be led, or how you want your dynamic to work, or there isn't an environment that works for whatever reason, you're probably in the wrong company. You should probably move. Because whatever happens after that, when you realize I can't talk to my manager about this, because this is something that won't be met with empathy, understanding, and support, then you will suffer by having that manager above you. You will suffer. There are better managers out there. And I know that sounds super scary, and I've actually had several people reach out on LinkedIn after I've done this type of conversations, pods and stuff, where they're like, I resigned today. It's like, good for you. Because life is too short, especially when you're struggling with fear and anxiety, which a lot of people who are neurodivergent do. When you're already struggling with fear and environment, you deserve to have managers and team members who actually get you, who helps you. You deserve that. And I think that that's one of the downsides of SaaS and speed. that you don't really have time to reflect on, do I really like working with my team? And you also are often coming in as junior, especially when you're in revenue, because it's a junior position to go in an SDR or AE. And you go in and you think you can't make any demands, and I'm telling you, you can. You can.
Yeah.
And some bosses will be super thankful that you tell them, and some bosses won't be, and that's probably not a great fit for you then.
Yeah, I had a thing that happened to me a few months ago. Actually, my partner was having a terrible time at work.
Yeah.
Just with a boss who was doing the opposite of all the things that you're talking about right now. Just like really narcissistic.
Yeah.
Micromanager, not understanding of anyone else's problems, and then when people would come with concerns about his managerial style, he'd gaslight them.
Yeah.
Gaslight them and say that, like, he'd say things like, do you know how that makes me feel to hear that? Like, this is craziness, right? So my partner called me a few months ago and said to me, he was like, he said, I need you to talk me down.
Yeah.
He said, I need you to convince me to not leave the job because I'm like in tears and I'm so upset.
Yes.
And I was just kind of like, why would I say that
No,
to you?
no, but
like,
right. So as your partner, I will tell you it's time to leave now. Now it's time because I don't care about how you, like, I don't care about your career. It's time to leave. And I think it's super important. I think it's super important. And one of the things that I also believe is important is that one of the things that I do, so I do quarterlies with myself. I don't know if I talked about this the last pod. It doesn't matter. I will say it again. So I do quarterlies with myself, right? Because I operate around myself very much like I am a development project that requires time and energy. I haven't always done that, but the last 10 years I've done this. So every quarter I take a day and a night somewhere else. So I go away to a hotel. We do them together, me and my partner now, but before that I did it alone. And I have a notebook and I have a pen and I put my phone away and I put my computer away and I sit down and I start writing down. So what have I, again, the same questions I'm asking my employees. What have I liked doing last quarter? What have I not liked doing? What do I want to do more of? What do I want to do less of? How do I feel on my personal life? How do I feel with my health physically? How do I feel with my mental health? What do I want to do more of? What do I want to do less of? And then that shapes into a plan. Many of my big life decisions, how scary they have been, has been made that day. Like in that moment when you sit down and you give yourself a day and you just, where am I? And this is something that I teach my sales team to do too. This is something I train my team in. Like for you, your career, you're in my team right now. You won't be here forever. I want to make sure that when you come out the other way, I see this very much as parenting. When you come out on the other side, you are more of yourself. You are more confident in your person. You are more competent in what you have learned when you have been here. And you're ready for the next step in your career that you want to do. So I am here to build you. That's my entire purpose. That's the same as when I look at my children. I am here to build them to be functional and happy people in the society they're going into. Functional and happiness. These are the two goals. Whatever else choices they make, whatever their sexuality is, whoever they love, whatever they decide to do as a career, I don't care as long as you're functional and happy. This is my only goal, right? And I work the same with my team members. We have a tendency as leaders, and this has to do with ego, and it's bullshit. We need to stop doing this. So leadership isn't about you. It's not about you, leader. It's about the team. Leadership has nothing to do with you. You are there to enable them. You are there to help them become more of themselves. And in some cases, that might mean that you will say to a person, we are not a fit for each other. This team and this role doesn't fit you. Do you want to move over to customer success? Do you want to do this instead? Because I see this criteria you have, the skill sets you have. I think you would be great running projects. Let's try that. Or this company culture and you do not fit well. You don't feel well. It's time to move on. That's your role as well, because none of this has to do with you as a leader. It has to do about them. It's all about them. And I approach my customers in sales process the same way. It's not about me. So if you say no, you're not saying no to Sarah, the person. That has nothing to do with it. You're saying no because of timing, or because you don't have the trust in the platform, or because you don't feel like this is the right move, or because you have other priorities, or because you have a better vendor at hand. Like, it has nothing to do with me. And we live in an ego bubble, and the manager you describe now is a person who is a 3-year-old child. Like, it's an ego bubble. But how can you say this to me? Like, dude. No.
Yeah. Yeah. It's unbelievable that it is the emotional intelligence of a 2-year-old.
Yes.
That
No, I think 2-year-olds are better actually than some leaders in the industry, if I'm gonna be honest. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it's crazy. And so I think what we're getting at here is self-reflection
yeah,
a lot of the time. Is
yeah,
the ability to self-reflect,
yes,
on yourself, I think is, and cultivating that in other people.
yeah,
So important, I
yes,
think. And I think that breeds empathy.
yes, I
I
agree.
think self-reflection and self-awareness, breeds empathy,
It
which
does.
are absolutely essential skills. And I think we're starting to realize that more. I think, like you said, it is 2024 now. I think the days are long gone of, CEOs striding around like tyrants, like kings, and what I say goes. And my partner and I have been watching Mad Men, and it makes us laugh because every 5 minutes somebody's just like, "You're fired. You're fired. Get your things because they did the slightest thing wrong."
Yes.
And I'm just kind of like, yeah, you can't do that anymore. If you do that now, somebody will post about you on LinkedIn, and then everyone will pile on you, like, and rightly so.
Yes.
I do think the connectivity of this age that we live in now,
Yeah.
where people can go on Trustpilot and
Yeah.
everything, people can't get away with that kind of behavior anymore.
No, they can't.
It's kind of,
And all the
it's
reviews on employment sites about the employer, all of these things breeds transparency. And I think the problem is that we're still glorifying some of these behaviors. We can still do jokes about how, I don't know, 20% of all leaders are sociopaths. And that's still a joke, right? Yeah, because they would stab down anyone to get it to the place they are. And I do believe that the reason why we're in an age of empathy being important now is because of how the political agenda is looking in the world. Because political agenda is it's not reading empathy, and that's a challenge. So we have a counter resistance, especially from the younger generation, 20 to 30 years old, who are looking at this and be like, you want me to give my waking hours to you, and you can't treat me like a person. I didn't sign up for this. I'm gonna say no, because even if I work for you, I still need an extra job just to pay my rent. So this is not worth it. The abuse that was glorified before about working 14 hours a day as an employee, that time is sort of past, but not everyone has caught up to that yet. And I think for SaaS founders and SaaS leaders right now, it is a struggle between how do I work with empathy if I actually genuinely believe that this will hurt my bottom line, because I still have a board. And this is a common problem right now because money doesn't grow on trees anymore. Investments aren't as easy to get. So at the one point, SaaS never had to worry about runway. Once you got funded, you had runway for 2 years, and you can make all the mistakes, and you can hire all the wrong people, and you can do all of these things. It doesn't look like that anymore. A lot of the companies that are growing right now, they are getting severely lack of funding compared to a couple of years ago. And some companies will have to bootstrap because VCs won't give them money. And then suddenly leading with empathy to have a team that can work together for a longer period of time becomes essential for the growth of your company. So it's going to be a shift, and I see it happen in some segments, but we have a long way to go to catch up, especially as sales leaders or SaaS leaders when we are not 20 to 30 years old. And there are plenty of those, and they are running their business very differently than some of the older SaaS companies are doing.
Yeah, I'd love to see it, definitely. And it just doesn't, it doesn't make sense to me that people don't understand how longevity and better business and better collaboration stems from being nicer to people and more understanding. Like, I don't understand how anyone could not grasp that. When has any organization functioned well? Any country when people are like living in fear and afraid to tell anybody anything,
No.
or because that's when businesses fall apart, isn't it? Is when people are scared to tell people things. Like, say you make a mistake and you're like, oh, I'm not going to tell them this, I'm just going to sweep that under the rug because it's going to lead to because I'm going to get penalized so badly, I'm going to get reprimanded so badly. But of course what happens then is the problem gets repeated and repeated again, and it's a massive problem. And then you can't blame individual employees for that then, because then you fostered an environment where people are afraid to speak.
And I think that one of the things that you can do, so let's say that you're a SaaS leader and you're listening to this, because this is a SaaS pod, right? So you're a SaaS leader, you're listening to this. I want you to consider one thing. When you promoted your last manager, did you think about what level of empathy they might have?
Yeah.
Was that a question that you even asked yourself? Or did you only go on numbers? You didn't look at how many team members that they had before that was burned out. You didn't look at how culture was in that team. You just looked at, oh, that person pulled in a lot of money for me. We need to readdress how we make decisions about who leads in our company. So as a SaaS founder, you need to ask yourself, how much empathy do I have for my team that are working their asses off for me? How much is empathy prioritized for me when I decide who to promote or hire? Is this something you even think about? And if you don't, I think you need to look inside yourself and think about why you don't.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So okay, this brings me to my next question, and this is a really tricky one. Like, some people are not naturally empathetic, and it doesn't mean that they're awful people.
No.
You know, it doesn't mean they're psychopaths. I have many friends who are not naturally empathetic people. They just aren't,
No.
you know, and it doesn't mean they don't have value, and it doesn't mean that, like, in fact, sometimes people like that are great because they tell you exactly what the problem is, you know, sometimes, and they don't worry about hurting your feelings occasionally that's useful.
We all have that one friend who's like, you look fat in that, like, thank you, I didn't ask you even, but thank you for the information.
But it can be very helpful when they say, you know, you were being a total dick there, you know, and no one else will say that, and then you reflect on yourself and you say, yes, I was.
Yes.
Yeah, you know. But my question is, how, if you're not a naturally empathetic person, how do you then cultivate empathy? How do you teach it in yourself, and how do you spread it throughout the course? Because it's going to come with more challenges, right? Does that just come through more self-reflection? Where does it come from?
But I think that there are a bunch of questions, because we all have things we need to work on, right? Like having a low empathy is just the same as lacking another skill. So we don't need to put value on empathy as a skill. We can just say that it's a skill. And if you identify, or if you get told a bunch of times that you seem to not have as much empathy, and this is something that you want to work on because you believe it will impact your team's result, because that's something that will trigger a reason to work on it, then there's a bunch of questions to ask yourself when you are in situations with other people. And this is the same with other skills. So again, if we put no value on empathy we say that low empathy, high empathy has nothing to do with your value as a person. It has nothing to do with how you should be seen. It just is a skill. And let's say that you can train it. Because if you don't have any empathy at all, and there are diagnoses who have no empathy, they don't have the ability to feel that empathy, then they have behavioral empathy. And behavioral empathy is behaving in a way that indicates and shows the other person that you do empathize with them, even if you don't feel it. And a lot of people who have children, as an example, who have lack of empathy, either they will train to behaviorally be empathetic with their children, or they don't. And that option is not really a good option because children need empathy, just like our teams need empathy, by the way. But it's a skill
That's how you
that
end
you
up
can
with
train.
sociopaths.
Empathy is, but again, this is the term sociopath is used now in a joking manner, but that's also a diagnosis. So that's something that is lacking in people's mind, right? They can't. It's not that they don't necessarily want to. It's just that they can't. And sociopathy has to do with having no empathy. And then psychopathy, which is the other version, has to do with what you do with that situation. So basically what crimes you commit. That's when you become determined to be a psychopath, when you do bad things to people. But sociopathy in itself is a very similar diagnosis to the other diagnoses I have mentioned now. And plenty of people have sociopathy and never hurt anyone. So it's the same as the Wolf of Wall Street salesperson. It's just another format of how it's portrayed in media, right? So if you have a situation where you have a lack of empathy, for whatever reason, you can practice behavioral empathy. So you can practice to behave to a person as if you are empathetic with them and see the difference. Because if you don't have empathy, you will be able to test these things out because you won't actually feel it in the beginning. It's a practice thing. So you will test out asking yourself a few questions. So a question would be, so how would I feel if I were this person now? How would that make me feel? Because it's a lot about understanding and anchoring in yourself. How would this behavior make me feel if I was on the other side of it? And suddenly you can start connecting the dots to, oh, if I was that person, I would probably be sad now because I just scolded this person. So maybe I need to tone down my voice now because I don't want to be interfaced this way. Why would this person want to? So it's a simple question to ask yourself when you're interacting with other people. And the practice of the skill is to ask the question. Because once you ask a question like this, your mind will start understanding what it is that's happening. Again, it's all about sort of what's happening in your head. And it's the same with any other skill. So let's say that I'm a salesperson and I'm in a sales meeting. And I ask the same question. How would I feel now if I was the customer? If I was getting sold to the way I'm selling to this person now, how would that make me feel? And if I feel like I want to jump out of a window because this is the most boring presentation I have ever seen, then I probably should change how I do my presentations. So when we go back to ourselves, we have a tendency of finding the answers. Like we find them. But the only difference between a person who is good at mentalizing and understanding how things work is the question. It is asking yourself a choice-based question and be aware enough to ask the question. Because once what follows that will help guide you in what to do next. And this you can adapt to any skill set. So I am sitting with a friend, take another example. I'm sitting with a friend, we've been talking for an hour. I've been talking 95% of the time. How would I feel if I met my friend and all they did was talk about themselves? How would that make me feel? And then after you ask that question in your head when you went to the bathroom, you can come back in and be like, what's up with you? Because you understand for yourself what's going on. And we as people, and I've worked with thousands of people, and I have been around so many people, and I've been to events, and I've seen a lot of how people interact, and we don't ask any questions to ourselves. We just move along in our lives. And there are no self-reflection questions happening at all. And this can go for like a year or two, or it goes for 10 years, and then you have a midlife crisis where all of these questions that you should have been asking yourselves ongoingly just comes like on your head. Like, oh my God, what am I doing with my life? And that's a very common situation because we don't ask ourselves what's going on. So that's my only tip. For empathy or any other skill, ask yourself, if I was on the other side of this behavior, what would I feel?
Yeah, that's great. I love it. Yeah, and it's so simple, but it makes total sense. Yeah. So I would love to talk to you all day about this, Sara, but we are running out of time again.
I know.
We could just go and go, but okay. So I think to wrap it up, let's just be practical then. Obviously inclusivity to neurodivergent people is really, really, it's no mean feat. It's difficult,
Yes.
So what would you say then, and every company's different, but practical strategies that, tomorrow, let's say you start to realize that like we're having quite a high turnover of staff. Maybe it's because we're not respecting other people's individual differences. What are some of the things that you can do as an organization, specifically as a SaaS organization, to address that tomorrow?
Yeah. So the next kickoff or gathering or whatever you have, bring in a speaker who talks about this. Take an outside voice, bring in a speaker who talks about this, and then you check in with a number of people in the organization like a week after. Like, what did you think about the lecture? Do you see anything like this in your team? Maybe we have some things to learn. Maybe we don't understand fully how to meet people like this. If we assume that 3 out of 10 have something, what can we do to enforce that? Go down to your staff at the bottom as well and ask a few of them these questions and see what will unravel in front of you. If you have that approach. Because when you take in an outside counsel to sort of speak about these points, to talk about work environment with neurodivergency or with diversity, right? This will start thought processes in most of the employees' heads. And it's a great way to start the conversation. Another way to start a conversation is to do a few targeted workshops with leaders of your teams. So you sit them down and you're like, if we were neurodivergent, how do we think we would behave? And then you base it off that and you have a bunch of questions that you ask to get people to start talking. And I swear to God that I guarantee you that half of your team leaders have children with at least one of them has something. I swear that this will be the result. And suddenly this environment, this office, this place that we work is open to having these conversations. So you need to allow the openness to be there. Once it happens, the floodgates will open. So do something specific to open the doors for these conversations and you will see the magic happening, because there will be plenty of stories to be shared. There will be plenty of situations where parents will talk about their children or will talk about their parents who also have things. And then suddenly it's an open conversation to have where there's no shame related to it. So that's a very simple way of starting.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sara. If people want to reach out to you, where should they go?
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn.
Yes.
Always
Sara Storm, always LinkedIn.
Great, thanks. It's been fantastic.
Yes.
I'm sure our audience can benefit from this.
I hope
Definitely.
so.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of SaaScast. For more top insights from the leading minds in SaaS, subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so you never miss a thing.